Fleetwood Mac had a sound unlike any other, a unique blend of rock, pop, and emotion that catapulted the band to global stardom. On stage, they appeared united, but behind the scenes, things were far more complicated. Tensions simmered, particularly between two key members, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. What began as a romantic connection between the two eventually unraveled, giving way to resentment and conflict. Their personal struggles often spilt into their professional lives, making collaboration difficult. In 2018, Buckingham was abruptly fired from the band, a move he believed Nicks orchestrated. So, what really happened? How did a once passionate love story spiral into bitterness and blame? Join us as we take a journey down memory lane to explore the highs, lows, and heartbreak that defined one of rock's most iconic duos. Where it all began. The 1960s saw the rise of numerous iconic musical artists, from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones to the legendary Elvis Presley. It was a golden era brimming with talent, and Fleetwood Mac would eventually take their place among the greats. Their music had a hypnotic quality, an infectious rhythm that made it almost impossible not to move along. But how did Fleetwood Mac reach such heights of success? Keep watching to find out. Lindsey Adams Buckingham, one of the key figures behind Fleetwood Mac's success, was born on October 3, 1949, in Palo Alto, California, to Morris H. Buckingham and Ruthita. His father, a former football star at San Jose State College, went on to become president of the Alexander Ballard Company, a San Francisco-based coffee producer known today for its popular Alta Organic coffee brand. Lindsey grew up in the affluent Bay Area town of Atherton, alongside his two older brothers, Jeffrey and Gregory. The Buckingham household placed a strong emphasis on athletics, and the boys were encouraged to swim competitively. While Lindsey eventually gave up sports to pursue music, his brother Gregory went on to win a silver medal in swimming at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. Lindsey attended Menlo Atherton High School and later enrolled at San Jose State University, following in the footsteps of his father and brother Greg, although he didn't graduate. His musical journey began with a toy Mickey Mouse guitar, strumming along to his brother Jeff's collection of 45s. Recognizing his budding talent, his parents later bought him a $35 harmony guitar. Despite never taking formal guitar lessons or learning to read music, Buckingham developed a unique and expressive playing style. By the age of 13, he was drawn to folk music and began mimicking the energetic finger-picking style of the Kingston Trio. These techniques would later define his signature sound. This natural talent and unorthodox approach to guitar would go on to shape the sound of Fleetwood Mac, leaving an indelible mark on music history. How Lindsey Buckingham became a member of the legendary Fleetwood Mac. From 1966 to 1971, Lindsey Buckingham performed psychedelic and folk rock as a bassist and vocalist with a high school band originally named the Fritz Robine Memorial Band. The band later rebranded as Fritz after some lineup changes in 1967. During this time, Buckingham invited his friend Stevie Nicks to join as a backing vocalist. Their creative partnership soon blossomed into a romantic relationship, which continued after they both left Fritz around 1971. In 1972, Buckingham and Nicks recorded 7 demo tracks using a half-inch 4-track Ampex recorder at Buckingham's father's coffee roasting plant in Daly City, California. Armed with their demos, they moved to Los Angeles to chase a recording contract. Their efforts paid off when Polydor Records signed the duo and released their self-titled album, Buckingham Nicks, in September 1973. Despite being produced by Keith Olsen and Richard Dashut, the album struggled commercially, and Polydor soon dropped them. To make ends meet, Buckingham joined Don Everly's backing band, covering Phil Everly's vocal parts on tour. Meanwhile, fate was working behind the scenes to open a much bigger door. While scouting Sound City Studios in California, Mick Fleetwood happened to hear "Frozen Love," a track from Buckingham Nicks. Impressed by the guitarist's skills, he asked who had played the part. As luck would have it, Buckingham and Nicks were in the studio that day recording demos. Soon after, Fleetwood met Buckingham, and when guitarist Bob Welch left Fleetwood Mac in December 1974, Fleetwood reached out with an offer. Buckingham, however, had one condition. He and Nicks were a package deal. He wouldn't join Fleetwood Mac without her. Fleetwood agreed, hiring both Buckingham and Nicks without even holding an audition. And this was the beginning of the end, not just for the young couple, but also for the band. Before officially joining Fleetwood Mac, Buckingham and Nicks went on a short tour to promote their Buckingham Nicks album. The touring band featured two drummers, Bob Aguirre and Gary Hodges, and bassist Tom Moncrief, who would later play on Nicks's 1981 solo album, Belladonna. While playing a show in Alabama, where their album had found a modest fan base, they told the audience they had just joined Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac breaks through. In 1975, Fleetwood Mac released their self-titled album, Fleetwood Mac, marking a turning point for the band. The album soared to #1 on the U.S. charts. Buckingham contributed 2 original tracks, Monday Morning and I'm So Afraid, both initially intended for a second Buckingham Nicks album. He also sang lead on Blue Letter and on Nicks' song Crystal. With their arrival, Fleetwood Mac's sound took on a fresh, magnetic quality that would ultimately reshape the band's identity and elevate them into rock legend status. Despite the success of Fleetwood Mac's first studio album with the new lineup, it was their second album together, Rumors, 1977, that catapulted the band to superstardom. The album became one of the best-selling records of all time, defining an era with its blend of heartbreak, harmony, and raw emotion. Lindsey Buckingham's Go Your Own Way served as the lead single, climbing into the U.S. top 10. The album also featured 2 more of his standout tracks, Secondhand News and Never Going Back Again. Additionally, Buckingham shared lead vocals on 2 of the band's most iconic live staples, The Chain, a rare track credited to the entire band, and Christine McVie's optimistic anthem, Don't Stop. During the making of Rumors, tensions within the band were running high, especially between Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, who ended their romantic relationship during this period. Despite the personal turmoil, the band delivered a masterpiece. Refusing to replicate Rumors' formula, Buckingham led the charge on their next studio effort, Tusk, 1979, a double album with a more experimental sound. He persuaded Mick Fleetwood to let him work on tracks independently at home before bringing them into the studio. The result was bold and ambitious. Tusk produced 3 major hits: Buckingham's title track, Tusk, featuring the USC Trojan Marching Band, US #1. 8, Christine McVie's Think About Me, US #20, and Stevie Nicks' sprawling emotional Sarah, US #1. 7, while Sarah was trimmed to 4.5 minutes for radio and early CD releases, the full 6.5-minute version has since been restored in later editions and greatest hits compilations. Interestingly, Fleetwood Mac's original guitarist Peter Green also contributed during the Tusk sessions, though his uncredited guitar work only appears on Christine McVie's track, Brown Eyes. While working on Tusk, Buckingham was also flexing his production skills, working on albums for artists like Walter Egan and Jon Stewart in the late 1970s. He eventually turned his attention to his own solo career. In 1981, he released his debut solo album, Law and Order. Buckingham played nearly every instrument on the record, with guest appearances by bandmates Mick Fleetwood and Christine McVie. The album embraced the quirky, lo-fi, and new wave influences that had begun to emerge during Tusk. Its standout single, Trouble, inspired by Fleetwood Mac producer Richard Dashut, became a hit, reaching number 1, 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, and spending 3 weeks at number 1 in Australia. After wrapping up a major world tour in 1980, Fleetwood Mac took a much-needed year-long break before returning to the studio. The result was Mirage, 1982, a more radio-friendly and pop-orientated album that brought the band back to the top of the U.S. album charts. While the album was a commercial success, it marked a period when the band's members, especially Stevie Nicks, were gaining traction as solo artists. This growing focus on individual careers meant that Fleetwood Mac wouldn't release another studio album for 5 more years. A year later, in 1984, following the end of his 7-year relationship with Carol Ann Harris, Buckingham released his second solo album, Go Insane. The title track reached number 1, 23 on the Hot 100. In a 2008 interview, Buckingham said the song was inspired by his post-breakup dynamic with Stevie Nicks. However, in her memoir Storms, Harris claimed the song was actually about her breakup with Buckingham. The album closed with D.W. Sweet, a heartfelt tribute to late Beach Boys drummer Dennis Wilson, who had been briefly engaged to Christine McVie and was a close friend of the band. During this time, Buckingham also collaborated with other artists. He played guitar and sang harmonies on Don Henley's You Can't Make Love from the album Building the Perfect Beast, 1984. He contributed to the iconic We Are the World charity single in 1985 and wrote Time Bomb Town for the Back to the Future soundtrack, playing nearly all instruments himself. In 1986, he co-wrote Since You've Gone for Belinda Carlisle's debut solo album, Tango in the Night and Departure from Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac's Tango in the Night, released in 1987, marked Buckingham's 5th studio album with the band and their biggest commercial success since Rumours. Interestingly, many of the songs on the album, such as Big Love, Tango in the Night, Family Man, Caroline, and You and I, had originally been written for what was intended to be Buckingham's 3rd solo album. Instead, he repurposed them for the band's project. Big Love, released as the lead single, became a top 10 hit in both the US and the UK. The album's success was undeniable, but it came at a cost. Not long after its release, Buckingham made the difficult decision to leave Fleetwood Mac. The stress of band dynamics, especially his lingering emotional entanglement with Nicks, had become too much. I needed to get some separation from Stevie, especially because I don't think I'd ever quite gotten closure on our relationship, he later explained. When you break up with someone, and then for the next 10 years you have to be around them and watch them move away from you, it's not easy. Buckingham was replaced by guitarists Rick Vito and Billy Burnett as Fleetwood Mac continued on without him, signaling the end of a defining chapter for the band and for him, the breakup with Stevie Nicks. Like many adult relationships, the bond between Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham eventually became rocky and complicated, but it didn't start that way. In the beginning, they genuinely fell in love and were completely captivated by each other. Their story began in the late 1960s when they met as high school seniors near Palo Alto, California. Buckingham was in a psychedelic rock band called Fritz, and when 2 of its members left for college, he invited Nicks to join as the lead singer. At that point, their connection was strictly musical. They were not romantically involved yet. Fritz remained together into the early 1970s, with both Nicks and Buckingham dating other people during that time. It wasn't until the band broke up and the two decided to move to Los Angeles to pursue music that they became romantically involved. I'm not sure we would have even become a couple if it wasn't for us leaving that band, Nicks later admitted in Stephen Davis's biography Gold Dust Woman. It kind of pushed us together. Before their move, however, Buckingham came down with mononucleosis, delaying their plans by nearly a year. During that time, Nicks took care of him, and their bond grew personally and musically. When they finally made it to LA in late 1972, the pair were immediately seen as a magnetic duo. They were immediately perceived as a sexy, star-bound couple, Davis wrote. People who encountered them recall an aura about them, a radiance. They were Mr. and Mrs. Intense, he with his curly locks and icy blue eyes, she with her long straight hair and piercing gaze. They formed a folk rock duo called Buckingham Nicks, releasing a self-titled album in 1973. Despite the iconic cover photo of them topless, the record didn't sell well and they were dropped by the label. Financial stress began to strain their relationship. Nicks was exhausted from waitressing and cleaning houses to make ends meet, while Buckingham had just returned from a rough tour with Don Everly. Still, they kept creating music. Early versions of Rhiannon and Landslide came out of this period, but their relationship had become tumultuous. Then, on the last day of 1974, everything changed. Mick Fleetwood, along with John and Christine McVie of Fleetwood Mac, heard Buckingham recording at a studio. Impressed by his guitar work, Fleetwood invited him to join the band. Knowing Buckingham came as a pair with Nicks, Fleetwood agreed to bring them both on board. At first, Buckingham was hesitant. He saw Fleetwood Mac as a revolving door of members and wasn't sure it was the right move. But Nicks, seeing the opportunity they had worked towards since the late 60s, persuaded him. I said, "Okay, this is what we've been working for since 1968, Nicks later recalled. And so, Lindsey, you and I have to sew this relationship back up. We have too much to lose here. We need to put our problems behind us. Maybe we're not going to have any more problems because we're finally going to have some money, and I won't have to be a waitress." The band went out for dinner, and the deal was sealed. And just like that, Nicks and Buckingham, both as a couple and as musical partners, were part of Fleetwood Mac, stepping into a new chapter that would define rock history. While writing and recording Rumors, released in early 1977, the already tense dynamics within Fleetwood Mac came to a breaking point. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks ended their romantic relationship during the process. At the same time, John and Christine McVie, married since 1968, also split up. Mick Fleetwood's divorce was nearing finalization as well, though he would remarry and re-divorce Jenny Boyd shortly after. From this emotional chaos came some of the band's most iconic music. Songs like Nick's Dreams and Buckingham's Go Your Own Way became anthems of heartbreak. Despite the turmoil, or perhaps because of it, Rumors became a massive critical and commercial success. The album won multiple Grammy Awards and remains one of the best-selling albums of all time. Reflecting on the band's drama, Fleetwood told The Times in 1976, "I think one day, John and I will write a book on what's gone down. The only problem is that no one will believe us." For Nicks, the depth of her connection with Buckingham always felt singular. "In Lindsey's mind, all the other women that came after me were all going after rich rock and roll star Lindsey," she told Rolling Stone. "Nobody was looking into the heart I had looked into. Nobody was seeing the guy before he was famous. We knew each other before. That's what makes us unique to each other." In the wake of her breakup with Buckingham, Nicks had a brief affair with Mick Fleetwood in 1977 during his second marriage. Meanwhile, Buckingham entered an 8-year relationship with Carol Ann Harris. They got engaged but were never married. Fleetwood acknowledged how strange it was that the band stayed intact through all the personal upheaval. "It's an unusual situation," he told The Times. "There are lots of bands who detest each other. We're not one of those. When we walk up on a stage, the band is very close." Despite the heartbreak, the band continued to perform, though the emotional tension never fully disappeared. As Nicks told The Times years later, she and Buckingham would often shoot eye daggers at each other during performances of breakup anthems like Silver Springs. That song, originally written for Rumors, was cut from the final track list and relegated to the B-side of Go Your Own Way. Over the years, Nicks went on to date several prominent musicians, including Don Henley, J.D. Souther, and Joe Walsh, each affiliated with the Eagles. She married only once, briefly, in 1983, to Kim Anderson, the widower of her best friend who had recently passed away. Though she never had children of her own, she remains close to her niece and godchildren. Buckingham, meanwhile, ended things with Harris in 1984. In 1998, he had a son with photographer and interior designer Kristen Messner. They married in 2000 and later welcomed 2 daughters. Buckingham focused more on studio work in the 1980s, releasing solo albums and stepping back from touring. He left Fleetwood Mac in the late 80s and wouldn't return for nearly a decade. Nicks followed him out of the band not long after, fully launching her own successful solo career with hits like Edge of 17, Stand Back, and Stop Draggin' My Heart Around, a duet with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. What did Buckingham have to say in all this? Despite their rocky relationship, Nicks and Buckingham continued performing together in Fleetwood Mac for years. Their emotional tension often spilt onto the stage, including a now viral TikTok clip from a 1997 concert where Nicks stared daggers at Buckingham while singing Silver Springs. Her lyrics, "You'll never get away from the sound of the woman that loves you," culminated in a fierce shout, "You'll never get away, never get away." The two musicians had also exchanged harsh words in media interviews over the years. Their final rupture occurred in 2018 after a behind-the-scenes altercation during the MusiCares Person of the Year concert, honoring Fleetwood Mac. Shortly afterwards, Buckingham was fired from the band, as previously reported by the Los Angeles Times. When asked if she regretted not walking away sooner, Nicks said she didn't. "No, I think that all just happened the way it should have. It happened one night, not planned, at MusiCares. I didn't even tell anybody it had happened in my head until the whole ceremony was over," she told Rolling Stone. That night, she had brought with her a song she had recorded with LeAnn Rimes titled Borrowed, hoping she and Buckingham might perform it together. But her hopes were dashed. "That's when he wasn't very nice to anybody," she recalled, noting that Buckingham had also been unkind to Harry Styles, who performed Landslide with Nicks during the event. "I could hear my mom saying, 'Are you really going to spend the next 15 years of your life with this man?'" Nicks added. "I could hear my very pragmatic father. And by the way, my mom and dad liked Lindsey a lot, saying, 'It's time for you guys to get a divorce.' Between those two, I said, 'I'm done.'" Nicks had no desire to reunite with Buckingham for any potential Fleetwood Mac farewell tour. "When Christine died, Fleetwood Mac died," she stated. Still, she wished her ex the best, especially following his 2019 heart attack. "I hope he lives a long life and continues to go into a studio and work with other people," she said. "He's also an icon, and he can teach people. He's not stopped in his tracks. He can still make music and have fun." When Rolling Stone pointed out that Nicks had arguably become a bigger musical icon than Buckingham, she responded, "Well, that was one of the problems, wasn't it?" Fleetwood Mac's future remained uncertain. Although Buckingham had resumed speaking to some former bandmates and expressed willingness to return, saying he'd be back like a shot if they invited him, his comeback hinged on Nicks. He believed the most recent tensions began in 2017, when he asked to delay a Fleetwood Mac tour by 3 months so he could release and promote a solo album. "At least one person in the band," he said, referring to Nicks, "wasn't very receptive to that." Things reached a boiling point in January 2018 during what fans dubbed the smirking incident. At the MusiCares concert, Nicks reportedly believed Buckingham was making a face behind her during her acceptance speech. Buckingham later denied the accusation, suggesting that such behavior, band members exchanging glances or laughing during Nicks's long speeches, had always been a running joke. Though no single incident appeared to have directly triggered Lindsey Buckingham's firing, years of tension and conflict finally reached a breaking point. Just days after the 2018 MusiCares Person of the Year concert, he received a phone call from the band's manager, Irving Azoff, informing him that he had been dismissed from Fleetwood Mac. According to Buckingham, Stevie Nicks had given the band an ultimatum: either he would go or she would. By December 2018, Buckingham and the band had quietly settled a lawsuit related to his termination. However, Nicks publicly denied his version of events. In a statement, she wrote, "I did not demand he be fired. Frankly, I fired myself. I proactively removed myself from the band and a situation I considered to be toxic to my well-being. I was done. If the band went on without me, so be it." Though their romance didn't last, the story of Nicks and Buckingham, equal parts beautiful and painful, remains one of rock's most legendary entanglements. Stevie's Nicks addiction. Cocaine use was rampant among Fleetwood Mac during the recording of their iconic album Rumours. The band even joked about thanking their drug dealer in the album credits, although that never actually happened. Among them, Stevie Nicks became particularly addicted to cocaine. As one of modern music's most influential figures, Nicks is known not only for her role as the captivating frontwoman of Fleetwood Mac, but also as a two-time inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and a talented songwriter. Despite her extraordinary musical abilities, her lifestyle in the late 1970s was filled with wild partying and excess, which became legendary. Remarkably, she was able to maintain incredible performances amid such chaos. What started as casual drug use quickly escalated into a serious addiction. Nicks went through several dangerous incidents, including one that nearly caused her to go blind. Yet, even after such close calls, she continued using cocaine moments later. Nicks' drug addiction escalated from casual recreational use to a full-blown reliance on cocaine, and by the time Fleetwood Mac's iconic album Rumours came around, she was deeply entrenched in her addiction. It was with Fleetwood Mac that Nicks's cocaine use first spiraled. Whether in the studio or on tour, drugs were always around. The band developed a ritual of using cocaine before each show, which quickly became a routine for Nicks, leading her further into addiction. Nicks had always struggled with stage fright, and one theory suggests that the cocaine provided a temporary relief from this anxiety. But more than that, it became an escape from the pressures of the rigorous touring schedule, which left her feeling isolated and alone. Nicks and Christine McVie even bought beautiful Coke bottles, which they wore around their necks, encrusted with gold, turquoise, and diamonds, as a symbol of their shared addiction during the Rumours recording sessions. Despite being in a relationship with Don Henley, Nicks remained lonely, and their busy lives kept them apart. This emotional void led her to start a brief affair with Mick Fleetwood, which she later described as doomed, and one that caused pain for everyone involved. Before the start of the Rumours World Tour, Nicks hosted a wild party to celebrate the album going platinum. The celebration lasted almost 48 hours, and during the madness, Nicks forgot to remove her contact lenses, which damaged her cornea and nearly caused her to go blind. Thankfully, the band's tour manager helped bandage her eyes, allowing her to avoid permanent damage. In recent years, Nicks has been open about her struggles with substance abuse. Her addiction had severe consequences, including physical injury from the constant cocaine use. The snorting caused a hole in the side of her nose the size of a coin. Despite a break from the band in 1982, Nicks's drug use didn't subside. In fact, it intensified as she embarked on her solo career. During this dark period, Nicks faced multiple personal tragedies, including the breakdown of several relationships and the death of her best friend. Yet through it all, drugs remained a constant in her life. When Fleetwood Mac returned to the studio to record Tango in the Night, Stevie Nicks' addiction had reached a dangerous point. She began blacking out frequently, and after a visit to the doctor, she was warned that she was on the brink of suffering a brain hemorrhage. The doctor told her in no uncertain terms, "The next time you do cocaine, it won't be pretty." Reflecting on her battle with addiction, Nicks admitted, "All of us were drug addicts, but there was a point where I was the worst drug addict. I was a girl, I was fragile, and I was doing a lot of coke. And I had that hole in my nose. So it was dangerous." In 1986, heeding the advice of her bandmates, Nicks checked herself into the Betty Ford Clinic to get clean. Fortunately, this marked the beginning of her recovery from cocaine, but it also led to a new battle, this time with prescription drugs. Nicks became addicted to Valium and other medications that doctors gave her to help her stay clean. The cycle of dependency worsened, and she eventually realized that the prescription drugs were as dangerous as her previous addiction to cocaine. In an effort to regain control, Nicks made the difficult decision to ask her personal assistant to take the drugs she was being prescribed. Though this action horrified her doctor, it ultimately led her to realize that sobriety was the only true path to recovery. She decided to stop relying on the prescriptions altogether, embracing a new, drug-free life, something she now fully controls. Nicks' battle with addiction is far from unique. Many people worldwide struggle with similar issues. However, her ability to survive numerous close calls and eventually overcome addiction not only speaks to her status as an iconic rock star, but also to her resilience as a person. Stevie Nicks managed to reclaim her life and legacy, solidifying her place as a true great in music history. What's your favorite Fleetwood Mac song? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to click on the next video to continue your journey through the fascinating world of music.